Hi, it's V with Craft and Daily Dose. I have another alternative for the April 2021 paper pumpkin called So Cool. Today we're going to be using the shaped popsicle card bases that come with the kit and then converting them to a pop-up stand card. You push down on the top of the card to reveal the popsicle. There is room on the back to write a message, and then it will stand on its own on its little base. For our card base, we're going to use basic white thick cardstock so that it will be more sturdy. And I've gone ahead and cut a piece of the cardstock in half. So now it's 4 1/4 by 11 inches. And I'm going to turn it so that the long side is going to be along the top of my trimmer. I need to make several different score lines here. The first one is going to be at 1/2 inch, but instead of trying to go in this direction, I always find it easier for these small measurements to use the guide on the right hand side. So I'm going to put it at 1/2 inch on the right. And then I'm going to use my lighter blade here, which is the scoring blade, and I'll make a score at 1/2 inch. Okay, now I'm going to turn it 180 degrees so that I'm going to have that score line on the left because I'm basing all the rest of my measurements along the left-hand side here. So the next one that we need to do is 2 3/4. Next is 3 1/4. Then we get to 5 1/2, and this is our halfway mark. So first I'm going to score at 5 1/2. And then I want to pause here and do some cutting, not right at the score line, but I want to cut a little bit to the left of it and a little bit to the right of it because I want to create a slit. So what I'm going to do is right now I'm at 5 1/2, but I'm going to scooch my paper just a tiny bit to the right. It isn't even a full notch, so it's really only about 1/32 of an inch. I'm going to move my scoring blade out of the way, and I'm going to bring up my cutting blade. Now, I don't want to cut the whole thing. I want to do a partial cut, leaving a 1/4 inch margin on the top and on the bottom. I like to mark my measurements with a little bit of washi tape. This is so that I can remember to stop and also so that you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to use the top of the washi tape to mark at the 1/4 inch mark, which is right here. Now my paper goes down to 4 1/4, so if we subtract 1/4 inch from that, we're at the 4 inch mark, which is right here. So now I'm going to make my partial cut between the tops of these two pieces of tape that I've marked. So I'm going to lift this up, get it into position. I want this little guide, this little notch on the side of my blade to start at 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to go down to 4 inches. Okay. So now I've cut it a little bit, and remember we started at 5 1/2 inches and we moved the paper just barely to the right. Now we're going to go back to 5 1/2 inches and we're going to move the paper just barely to the left. Again, not even to a whole 1/16 of an inch tick, so it's like 1/32 of an inch. And make that same mark from 1/4 down to 4, and since my blade is already in this position, I'll just start at the 4 and go up to the 1/4. So you can see that what I've done is I've made 2 parallel lines on either side of that 5.5 inch mark. Now I'm just going to take my snips and I'm going to connect those 2 cuts. And that forms a slit. Going to move my cutting blade out of the way. We don't need those markers anymore. And then we're going to finish doing the rest of our scoring. So next I want to go to 7 3/4. And then 8 1/4. And the last one, we're almost there, 10 1/2. Okay. Now to decorate this card base, I'm going to be using some pieces of the Ice Cream Corner Designer Series paper. This is the paper that coordinates with this kit, and you can tell on the back there are some popsicles that look very much like the ones that we are using. If you don't have this paper, one option that you have is to use the envelopes that came with the kit. So this is a printed pattern on the envelope that extends all the way down to the bottom of the envelope. You could take the envelope apart and cut out pieces. You would need to have 2 full envelopes in order to provide the same pieces of paper. These are each 4 inches by 2 inches. But I really like these envelopes, and I have a bunch of Ice Cream Corner cards that I've made, so I want to save these. So I'm using the pattern paper instead. I'm going to go ahead and fold along all the score lines that I had made before. These are all going to be mountain folds, meaning we're folding the paper away from us. And by folding it now, it helps to make it more obvious where the different panels are, and that will make it easier for you to line up your pattern paper to center it. And then I'm just going to reinforce the folds with my bone folder. Now the pieces of pattern paper are going to be centered over the panels, and for this you can use your Stampin' Seal or your glue. Next, you need a piece of window sheet that is 3.5 by 5.5. If you don't have window sheet and you want to try to use maybe a different type of plastic or acetate, just make sure that it is a sturdy enough weight so that it doesn't flop over, because we're going to need this to be able to stand up on its own when the card base pops up. Another option would be to use a piece of cardstock that's the same size, so 3.5 by 5.5. This is how the popsicle card bases come in the kit. They are meant to fold over so that you can open up your card like this, but you want to go ahead and separate them, cut them apart, either with your snips or with your trimmer, so that now you have two pieces, the printed piece and then the plain white piece. Now I'm going to take the patterned half of the popsicle and I'm going to adhere it to the window sheet. And if you wanted to use the mini glue dots that are in your kit, you can do that. You just have to have a little patience to put a whole bunch of them on. You could also try your Stampin' Seal, but I'm going to use the tear and tape because that's going to give me a stronger hold. The thing that you can't use though is glue because that is not going to adhere to this slick surface. So for the tear and tape, I'm just going to put it along the sides here. For this application, I don't need to be very precise about it, so I'm going to tear it rather than cutting it. And to do that, I like to put my nail up against where I want it to tear, and then I use my other hand to kind of brace it and then pull away. This way I can tear it without touching the sticky parts because then I'm going to make them less sticky. So let's do another strip up here at the top. And now I'll keep going down the sides and up the middle. Now your popsicle will fit in the card if you put it standing straight up and down, but I think it's a little bit more interesting to kind of put it at an angle. So I'm just going to angle it and just kind of make it fit within the parameters of this window sheet. Once it's on there, I will turn it around and then I'm going to adhere the white half on top of it so that it covers things up and the tape doesn't show. And also, this is going to give you a surface for writing your message on the back. So the reason that we have mounted this popsicle onto a piece of window sheet is because we need this whole bottom surface here to be nice and smooth. When we are sliding the card up and down, if this were not mounted onto something and, making sure that this corner was down smooth, then it would create a catch point and your card would not work very well and you could end up dinging this corner over here. So that's why we need to stabilize it by putting it onto something. The parts that are up here are not really necessary for stabilizing it. So if you wanted to, you could cut these off, because once the base starts to slide up at this point, there's no other place for it to get caught on. So it's just going to automatically slide all the way up smoothly, and there's nothing to catch on it coming down. So it's not going to create a problem if we cut this part off. If you were using cardstock instead of window sheet, you can decide whether you like the look better by leaving the whole rectangle of cardstock intact, or whether you wanted to trim off part of it. We're ready to put the popsicle into the card. I've put some tear and tape along the bottom, and I did go ahead and cut it instead of tear it this time, just so that it can be a little bit more precise for this. So I'm going to turn the card base over. You have this 1/2 inch flap at the end here. You want to fold that up. And then your popsicle is going to be turned upside down, and we're going to center this window sheet that has the popsicle on it onto this flap, okay, right here. Now, before you put it in place, check and make sure you want the top of the popsicle to peek through that slot just a little bit, because otherwise it's going to get lost in there. If it gets enveloped completely when the card is closed, then it's going to be hard to slide that card open. So you want it peeking out some. And depending on the angle that you put your popsicle, if this is not peeking out very much, you might have to install it just a little bit higher or just a little bit lower. You still want it to be on this flap, but it can be closer to this edge or closer to this edge, depending on what you need. So I'm going to actually do mine closer to this edge because I have enough height on the popsicle in order to do that. So what I'll do is remove part of the backing. I don't need to expose all of the adhesive right away. I'm just going to do part of it and hang on to this little tail here. So again, the top of the popsicle has to go through the slot, and then we're going to center this bottom piece, right about here. That works for me. Once I'm happy with my placement, I can go ahead and press down, and then I can double check and make sure everything looks good over here. When I'm ready, I can slowly pull the rest of the backing and gradually get the rest of it to adhere down. So let me show you what you have. This is what it looks like in the closed position. This is what it looks like from the side. And now we are going to take another piece of tear and tape, and I'm going to put a strip of it all the way across. All the way across. And now it's going to get adhered to this other little 1/2 inch flap on the other end. So they're going to meet together like this, and you can see how the card folds flat. So same as before, we're going to remove part of the backing to expose some of the adhesive, leave ourselves a little tail to pull on later, and fold it down flat and let these two flaps come together. When you're happy with that, you can gradually expose more adhesive and push them together the rest of the way down. So now you can see what happens when you push on the top of the card. When you need to write your message, you can shift everything forward like this so that this part will be flat and then you can write on it. It may be very tempting to try to decorate the front of your popsicle, but if you do that, you're going to create a catch point when it's sliding. You don't want it to get tripped up on something, so be careful about that. You also want to be careful about decorating this bottom panel down here. You can put something if it's going to be adhered well and that it lies really flat, but you don't want to put anything up on the dimensional foam stickers, for example, because when the card is open, this becomes your base that it rests on, and it's going to wobble if you've got part of it elevated on dimensionals. So really the best part to decorate would be on this panel over here. So that's what we're going to do. I'm putting down my foam mat from my Stamparatus and then one of the labels that came with the kit. I'm stamping up the sentiment in Bermuda Bay ink. I'm going to put the strip of silver glitter paper behind my sentiment banner, and I'll use tear and tape for this. Then I'll put some dimensionals behind both of them. I've got about 12 inches of twine here, and I'm just going to wrap it around my fingers a few times and then tuck it in behind the sentiment strip. Check what it looks like from the front, and if I'm happy with it, I will go ahead and stick it down onto this panel over here. And that's it. Our card is done. Here's the two of them together. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this dose of creativity and that you'll join me the next time. Have a great day.